You don't belong in a place like this. The words landed quietly, the way certain cruelties do, not shouted but placed. Set down with care, the way you'd set down something expensive you wanted to break slowly. Jonah Tremblay didn't move. He was standing outside the entrance to Hargrove Private Medical Clinic on Sherbrooke Street West, Montreal, on a Tuesday in late October. The kind of afternoon that can't decide between autumn and winter. Cold enough to see your breath, warm enough that people still pretend it's not. He had a worn canvas jacket, work boots that had been resoled twice, and a duffel bag over one shoulder. He looked like someone who fixed things for a living. He was. The woman who'd spoken was in her early 50s, tailored coat, silver hair swept back, the expression of someone who considered herself patient because she didn't raise her voice. Her name was Constance Hargrove. Her family's name was on the building. Move, she said again. You're blocking the entrance. Jonah stepped aside. One step. He wasn't blocking anything. There was room for 3 people to walk through. Constance didn't walk through. She stopped. Her eyes moved over him the way certain people's eyes move over things they've already decided aren't worth examining. Coat, bag, boots, face. Decision made in under 2 seconds. Are you here for the program? Her tone shifted to something performatively gentle. The detox program is at the annex. Around the back, Jonah said nothing. The side entrance, she said, slower, louder. Around. The back. She turned to the man walking behind her, her son-in-law, Patton Devereux. Tall, well-dressed, carrying her bag because that's what he did on these mornings. He caught Jonah's eyes and looked away quickly. Not in shame. In the specific discomfort of someone who knows something is wrong and has decided today is not the day to say so. Constance pushed through the front doors. Patton followed. The doors whispered shut. Jonah stood there for a moment. He looked at the building, the Hargrove name in brushed bronze above the entrance. His jaw tightened, then released. He'd been releasing that jaw for 19 years. He turned and walked back toward Rue Saint-Denis. His phone buzzed. His assistant, calling from Toronto. The St. Henry land purchase is finalized, she said when he answered. Full block, 42 units. We can break ground in spring. Good. Keep it quiet. The clinic deal? Not yet. He stopped at the corner, watching a delivery van idle in the bike lane. I need to see something first. He ended the call and put the phone in his pocket. From inside his jacket, he pulled a folded piece of paper. He'd folded and unfolded it so many times the creases had gone soft and pale, like old scar tissue. He didn't open it all the way, just enough to see the letterhead, Hargrove Health Partners, Quebec Division. And below it, a date. March 14, 2006. 19 years he'd been carrying this paper. 19 years since he found it in a shoebox under his mother's bed 3 weeks after her funeral, between a stack of unpaid bills and a birthday card she'd written him for his 21st birthday, but never sent because she'd been in the hospital by then. He folded it back before the rest showed, before the words claim denied became visible to anyone passing by. He kept walking. His mother had been a nurse, 26 years at a community health center in Verdun. She gave flu shots to elderly neighbors who couldn't get to a clinic. She drove patients to appointments on her days off. She kept notes on every family she worked with. Names of the kids, allergies, what made them laugh when they were scared. Lucy Tremblay did not believe in leaving people behind. She got sick in 2005. Not dramatically. Gradually, the way the worst things often happen. Fatigue first, then numbness in her left side, then a fall in the kitchen, that she didn't tell Jonah about until 2 weeks later because she didn't want him to worry. He was 20, working 2 jobs, trying to save enough to finish his engineering degree. Her GP referred her to a neurologist. The neurologist wanted an MRI, a specific kind, a functional scan not covered under provincial health insurance. The wait time in the public system was 11 months. The neurologist's notes said clearly, monitoring delay could be significant given presenting symptoms. Lucy had private supplemental insurance through her employer, Hargrove Health Partners, the plan her union had negotiated 6 years earlier, the one deducted from her paycheck every 2 weeks like rent. She paid into it for 68 months without ever making a claim. The denial letter arrived in March 2006, Hargrove Health Partners, Quebec Division. Claim reference HHPQ 2006-447, requested service, neurological functional imaging. Status, denied. Reason, investigational procedure, not listed under covered diagnostic services per Schedule C, subsection 4. The procedure was not investigational. It had been standard diagnostic protocol since 2001. But Schedule C, subsection 4, hadn't been updated since 1999, because updating it would cost the company money, and the person responsible for approving plan updates had decided the cost wasn't justified. That person's name was at the bottom of the letter. Neat, unhurried handwriting. The signature of someone who signed a lot of letters and thought about none of them. Constance Hargrove, VP of Benefits Administration. Lucy appealed. The appeal was denied in 6 weeks. She appealed again. That one took 3 months and arrived as a form letter. Jonah helped her draft a third appeal. By then it was October, the fall of 2006. The neurologist had already told them, privately, what the delay likely meant. By the time Lucy could get the scan through the public system, it was January 2007. The results explained everything that had been happening for the last 18 months. It also explained why treatment options were now significantly limited. She died on April 3, 2008. Jonah was 23. He held her hand in a room on the 4th floor of the Montreal Neurological Hospital and listened to the monitors go quiet. Outside, the city was still doing what it always does, indifferent and alive. He sat in the parking garage afterward for an hour and a half. He didn't cry, he just sat. Then he went back to work. He built Tremblay Infrastructure Group from 3 employees in a Rosemont basement to a firm with offices in Toronto, Calgary, and Montreal. Green construction, affordable housing, community development, the kind of work that gets written about in planning journals and occasionally in the papers, though Jonah never sought coverage. He gave an interview once to a student journalist at Concordia who asked why he focused on underserved communities. He said, "Because the people who built this country mostly didn't get to live in the comfortable parts of it. And because someone told me once that you don't fix things by burning them down." That someone was his mother. He came back to Montreal in October not because he'd forgiven anything. He came back because the Hargrove family was selling. Hargrove Health Partners had dissolved in 2019, amid a class action from several hundred former subscribers whose claims had been denied under that same Schedule C. The settlement was sealed. The money was small. Constance had shifted the family's holdings into private medical services, the clinic on Sherbrooke, 2 wellness centers in Westmount and Outermont, a diagnostics lab in Laval. All profitable, all quietly named, all built on the assumption that some people's health was worth protecting and some wasn't. 6 months ago, Tremblay Infrastructure Group had made an offer on a parcel of land adjacent to the St. Henry Clinic property. Land that Hargrove Holdings had been trying to sell to fund an expansion. The offer was made through a numbered company. The Hargrove family didn't know who they were dealing with. They were still trying to figure out if they wanted to accept. Jonah came to Montreal, dressed simply because he wanted, to see one more time how the name on the door treated the people who didn't fit their lobby. Constance answered that for him in 40 seconds. He was sitting in a cafe on Duluth when the call came from his assistant. "The legal team is ready whenever you give the word," she said. "The numbered company disclosure goes through Friday if you want to time it." "Not yet." "There's something else." A reporter from Le Monde Communautaire has been asking around about the St. Henry land. She's been talking to former Hargrove subscribers. Jonah was quiet. "Her name's Amélie Fontaine," his assistant continued. "She filed an access to information request on Hargrove's zoning applications last month. She seems to know there's something bigger here." He looked out the window at the street. A woman was pushing a stroller and talking on the phone at the same time, managing both with a competence that nobody would ever write an article about. "Let her dig," he said. "Don't confirm anything, but don't obstruct either." He ended the call and ordered another coffee. 2 tables away, a man named Christophe Devereaux was watching him, not because he recognized him, because something about the man in the canvas jacket bothered him in a way he couldn't name. Christophe was Patton's brother. He'd been at the clinic that morning, dropping off documents for Constance. He'd seen the exchange outside the entrance from the parking garage across the street, and something had stuck with him. Not guilt. He wasn't wired for guilt, not in the traditional way. More like curiosity. The man hadn't reacted. He hadn't gotten angry or defensive or deferential. He'd just stepped aside calmly and waited, like someone who'd already decided that moment wasn't the one that mattered. Christophe had spent 8 years working for the Hargrove family's legal team. He knew what it meant when someone wasn't reacting. He took out his phone and searched Jonah Tremblay, Montreal. The results loaded. He read for a while, set the phone down, picked it up, read some more. Then he ordered a second coffee and thought about what he wanted to do with what he now knew. Amélie Fontaine had been a journalist for 11 years. She'd covered the 2017 flood response failures in Saint-Marthe-sur-le-Lac, the nursing home, staffing crisis during the pandemic, and a 3-part investigation into predatory subtracting in federal construction projects that led to 2 ministerial resignations. She was 34, and allergic to the word source being used as a verb. She'd started looking at the St. Henry land story because a tenant advocate named Rosaire Bodine had called her in September. They're selling the parcel to someone, and no one will say who, Rosaire had told her. But whoever it is has already met with the borough planning office 3 times. That doesn't happen unless there's something real behind it. Amélie filed her access request. She waited. She talked to people in the neighborhood. A woman who ran a community kitchen. A retired electrician who'd watched 3 buildings on his block flip in 4 years. A Haitian-Canadian family who'd been in the same apartment for 16 years and recently received their 3rd rent increase notice. She found the Hargrove connection by accident, a footnote in a zoning document referencing a previous environmental assessment on the parcel commissioned by Hargrove Holdings in 2021. She started pulling on that thread. What she found wasn't a real estate story. It was older than that. She tracked down 14 former Hargrove Health Partners subscribers who'd had claims denied between 2004 and 2013. 11 of them didn't want to talk, too tired, too scared, too busy surviving the consequences of what happened to them to go back and describe it. 3 of them did. A man named Roger Okafor, 67, retired transit worker, whose cardiac monitoring claim had been denied under the same Schedule C in 2009. He'd had a minor heart attack 4 months later that a cardiologist told him, privately, might have been caught earlier. A woman named Sandra Vachery, 59, former school administrator, whose physiotherapy claim after a workplace injury had been denied, delayed, and then partially approved after she hired a lawyer. The partial approval arrived after she'd paid out of pocket for 6 months and taken on credit card debt she was still carrying. And a woman named Jonah Tremblay, deceased. Amélie found her through the 3rd appeal on file with the provincial insurance regulator, one of the few documents that hadn't been sealed in the class action. The appeal had been filed in 2007. It listed a contact, Jonah Tremblay, son. She searched the name. She sat very still for a while. Then she called his office. The assistant told her Mr. Tremblay had no comment at this time. Amélie hung up and looked at her notes. She'd been a journalist long enough to know that no comment at this time, from someone who could afford to say a great deal more, was not the end of something. It was the beginning. She published what she had on a Thursday morning. Not everything, not the connection she suspected, but the documented pattern. 14 denied claims. Schedule C, 3 named survivors. Roger Okafor on record carefully, his voice steady and controlled in the way that people who've had to explain trauma to indifferent systems become steady and controlled. By Friday afternoon, Constance Hargrove's communications director had sent a letter. Her language was careful. Any suggestion that claim decisions at Hargrove Health Partners were made on any basis other than policy guidelines is without foundation and will be vigorously contested. Amélie's editor read it and sighed. He wasn't a bad editor. He was an editor running a community paper on a budget that had been cut twice in 3 years and who'd already received a call from the Hargrove family's law firm. "We have to be careful here," he told her. She looked at him. "I know what we have. I also know what we can afford to fight." He pushed his glasses up his nose. "Wait until we have something they can't threaten away." Amélie went back to her desk. She looked at the name she'd written on a yellow sticky note. Jonah Tremblay, son. She'd circled it twice. She didn't call him again. She went to the cafe on Duluth where a contact had told her he sometimes worked in the mornings. He was there. Canvas jacket, plain cap, coffee, half-finished, notepad open. He looked up when she sat down across from him, and he didn't seem surprised. "You've been carrying the appeal letter," she said. Not a question. He looked at her evenly, for 19 years. She set her recorder on the table. He looked at it, then at her. "Tell me what you want to say," she said. "All of it," he told her. Not the way someone performs a grievance. Not with a press release in his pocket. He told her the way you tell something to someone you've decided finally to trust. Slowly, with long pauses. The way you tell a story that has been living inside you so long that finding the words for it feels like excavating something that hardened years ago. He told her about his mother's handwriting on the birthday card she never sent. He told her about the appeal letter and what it felt like at 23 to understand that the system her union trusted had been designed to save money by saying no. He told her about building his company and about the 19 years of watching the Hargrove family's name expand onto new signs, while his mother's name existed only in his memory and a file at the provincial regulator. He told her that he could have come after them legally, directly, 5 years ago when Tremblay Infrastructure Group first had the resources to make it genuinely costly. He'd considered it. "What stopped you?" Amélie asked. He looked out the window. His mother, he said. She used to tell him that rage was energy, and energy could be pointed. She'd seen what happened when people pointed it backward, at the ones who'd hurt them, instead of forward at what they were trying to build. "So you built instead." "I tried to," he said. "And then the Hargrove family put their land on the market, and I thought, there's something else I can do here." Something she would recognize. What changed? He looked at Amélie. "Constance Hargrove told me I was blocking the entrance." He said it without effect. There was no exit at the back. There was just a woman who looked at a person she'd already decided didn't belong, and she acted accordingly. And I realized, 19 years, nothing has changed. He reached into his jacket, the folded paper. He opened it fully this time and set it on the table. Amélie looked at the letterhead, the date, the signature at the bottom. She did not look away for a long time. Christophe called her the following Tuesday. He'd gotten her number through Rosaire Bowden, who he'd met at a community consultation he'd attended partly out of boredom, and partly because something had been bothering him since the morning outside the clinic. "I work for the Hargrove legal team," he said. "Worked," the past tense noted. Amélie picked up her pen. "Why past tense?" "Because," he said, "I can't keep being in a room while certain things happen." He had emails. Internal communications between Constance and her board from the weeks after the original article. Not Amélie's. An earlier piece in another outlet that had referenced the class action. The emails discussed the class action settlement, the Schedule C freeze, and what legal had described as acceptable risk tolerance for administrative claim review. Acceptable risk tolerance, the phrase used when you have a spreadsheet open and you're deciding how many denials you can sustain before it costs more to settle than to pay claims. He also had something else. A memo from 2006, internal, recommending that Schedule C not be updated for another 3-year cycle, despite a staff actuary's note that several covered procedures had been reclassified as standard diagnostic protocol by the Canadian Medical Association. The memo was authored by the VP of Benefits Administration. It was countersigned by the CEO, Constance Hargrove, and her father, Edmund Hargrove, who'd been dead since 2015, which meant he couldn't be called to account, which was probably why certain things had remained sealed. Amélie read the documents twice. She looked at Christophe across the cafe table. "Why?" she asked. He was quiet for a moment. "Because I watched a woman tell a man he was blocking an entrance he wasn't blocking, and he didn't react, and I kept thinking about why someone wouldn't react." He shook his head slightly. "A person reacts when they think the moment is the one that matters. He didn't react. He was waiting for a different moment, and I thought, what kind of person knows the moment that matters isn't yet?" He picked up his coffee, someone who's been waiting a very long time. The second article ran on a Monday. Amélie's editor had read the documents 3 times. He'd called a media lawyer he trusted. He'd called another one. He'd sat in his office with the door closed for an hour, and then come out and told Amélie, "We're running it." The response from Hargrove Holdings came within 24 hours. Cease and desist, defamatory claims, legal action threatened, the usual apparatus of money defending itself against accountability. But the documents were real. They were dated and signed and cross-referenceable against the class action filings that hadn't been fully sealed. Amélie had been careful. The story held. And something else happened? Roger Okafor had shared the article on a community Facebook group for retired transit workers. By Tuesday morning, it had been reshared 412 times. By Wednesday, it was in La Presse. By Thursday, a journalist at CBC Montreal had filed their own access to information request on the provincial insurance regulator's complaint records from 2004 to 2013. Hargrove Holdings retained a second law firm. They issued a second statement. They began, quietly, to cancel 3 of the 4 meetings they'd had scheduled with potential partners for their Laval expansion. The St. Henry land sale was put on hold. Constance Hargrove, for the first time in 19 years, was in a situation money could not immediately fix. The call came on a Friday afternoon. Jonah was in Toronto. In a meeting he ended early, because his assistant told him it was Constance Hargrove's office. He let it go to voicemail. He listened to it twice. Her voice was composed. She would like to meet, to discuss the land transaction and any concerns Mr. Tremblay might have. Her assistant would coordinate. He called his own assistant back. Tell them I'm available Tuesday. The clinic. Her office. You're going to the clinic? He was quiet for a moment. I need to walk through the front entrance. He arrived on Tuesday, wearing the same canvas jacket, same cap, same boots. He stood outside the front entrance on Sherbrooke Street for a moment and then walked through the front doors. The receptionist greeted him by name. Mr. Tremblay, Dr. Hargrove is expecting you. He rode the elevator to the 4th floor, a corner office. Montreal spread out behind glass, November now, and the trees bare, the city gray and bright at the same time. Constance was standing when he entered. She'd prepared for this. He could see the preparation in the stillness of her posture, the way people stand when they've rehearsed. She extended her hand. Mr. Tremblay. He shook it. He sat down. She had an agenda. The land transaction, the numbered company, the timeline of the acquisition. She'd clearly had counsel prepare her. She was careful and precise, and she was very good at this. He let her finish. Then he reached into his jacket and put the folded paper on the desk. She looked at it. She didn't touch it. Claim number HHPQ 2006-441 Sen, he said. Policyholder Lucy Tremblay. Status, denied. Reason, investigational procedure. He paused. Signed by you. Constance was very still. My mother's neurologist documented that monitoring delay could be significant. The procedure was standard protocol. Your department knew that and chose not to update Schedule C because updating it would cost money. She said nothing. She died on April 3, 2008. Jonah's voice didn't change. He was not performing composure. He simply was composed. She was 51 years old, and she was a community nurse for 26 years. And she died because the process that was supposed to protect her was designed to protect your company's margins instead. Constance Hargrove put her hand flat on her desk. The gesture of someone trying to steady themselves without appearing to. I was not personally reviewing individual files in 2006, she said. Decisions of that nature were. Your signature is on the letter, he said, and your name is on the 2006 memo recommending Schedule C not be updated despite the CMA's reclassification. She absorbed that. Processed the fact that he had the memo. What do you want? She asked. Jonah looked at her. He'd thought about this moment for 19 years. Not this exact configuration of it. He'd imagined courtrooms and boardrooms and arguments and numbers. He'd imagined a version of this where he was angrier. He'd imagined a version where she was smaller. What he felt sitting across from a woman who'd told him to go to the back entrance was mostly tired. Tired of carrying something this heavy for this long, and clear, finally, completely clear, about what to do with it. There's a parcel of land in St. Henry, he said, adjacent to your property. My company owns it. I'm going to build 42 units of affordable housing on it. Community health clinic on the ground floor. The clinic will be named after my mother. He set a second document on the desk. The sale agreement for the Hargrove parcel. Modified, I want you to sell me the adjoining property at assessed value. Not market, assessed. It will be added to the development. It doubles our footprint in the neighborhood. He looked at her steadily. The alternative is that we proceed with what Amélie Fontaine is prepared to publish. The full story, including the memo, including the claim records, including the class action documentation that your lawyers didn't fully seal. Which becomes a story about a $40 million land transaction by the same company whose practices your family designed. He paused. That story reaches a different audience than a community page. Constance looked at the agreement. You could sue us, she said. There are limitation periods. The limitation period for the civil claim may have passed, he agreed. The story doesn't have a limitation period. She was quiet for a long time. Long enough that through the window Jonah could see a flight path over the city, a thin white line being drawn and then dispersed by the wind. I'll need to speak with counsel, she said. Of course, he said. He stood. The agreement has a 7-day response window. He picked up the claim denial letter, folded it back the way he always had, creases finding their old paths. He put it back in his jacket. At the door he turned. I'm not asking you to understand what you did, he said. I know that's not how this works. I'm asking you to do one thing. Now, that doesn't make it worse. He left. She signed on the 6th day. The announcement went out 3 weeks later through Tremblay Infrastructure Group's communications team. A community development project in St. Henry, affordable housing, 84 units, community health clinic, green construction, groundbreaking in spring. Named in memory of Lucy Tremblay, community nurse, Verdun, Montreal. Roger Okafor was at the press conference. So was Sandra Vachery. So was Rosaire Bowden, who cried a little and pretended he wasn't. Amélie Fontaine stood to the side with her recorder and her notebook and the expression of someone who has found the story that makes 11 years make sense. Jonah spoke briefly. He thanked his team. He thanked the borough. He thanked the community members who'd talked to Amélie when it was easier not to. He didn't mention the canal deal. He didn't mention Constance Hargrove. He didn't mention 19 years or a folded piece of paper or a hospital room on a Thursday morning in April. He talked about his mother. The birthday card she'd written him, the way she drove patients to appointments on her days off, the way she said, "You don't fix things by burning them down. You fix things by building something better in their place, and you make sure the people who got left out of the last version get a seat in the next one." After, Amélie approached him. "You could have taken them apart," she said. "The story was there. I know. Why didn't you?" He looked at the rendering on the display board behind the podium. 42 units, soon to be 84. His mother's name in simple letters above the clinic entrance. "Because she would have hated watching me become someone who only knows how to destroy," he said. "She spent her whole life building something. The least I can do is keep building." He picked up his jacket from the chair beside him. The same canvas jacket. He'd thought about wearing something else today, something that matched the occasion. He'd decided against it. Constance Hargrove did not attend. She released a statement through her communications director, acknowledging the importance of community development in St. Henry and wishing the project success. Nobody quoted it. There's a kind of justice that doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't come with a verdict read aloud in a packed courtroom or a gavel strike that echoes off the walls. It comes quietly, like a groundbreaking on a cold morning in April, like a name on a building that wasn't there before. Like the weight of something you've carried for 19 years, finally settling somewhere it can be of use. Jonah Tremblay walked out of that press conference and back into the November city, and nobody stopped him. Nobody looked past him. He looked like a man who fixes things for a living. He was. If you've ever been told to use the back entrance when you had every right to walk through the front, leave a comment. Those stories deserve to be told.